Welcome to the Explainer. So if you keep goldfish, you already know the absolute struggle of trying to keep any kind of greenery alive in their tank. It honestly feels impossible sometimes, right? Well, today we're looking at a plant that a lot of people claim is the absolute perfect match for goldfish, hornwort. But is it actually the ultimate biological filter and tank savior? Or is it just a messy, invasive nightmare waiting to clog up your filter? Let's dive into the pros, the cons, and the real science behind mixing hornwort with your goldfish.
To really understand why hornwort is such a massive deal in the hobby, we first kind of have to acknowledge the reality of goldfish themselves. Look, they are lovable underwater bulldozers. They're opportunistic feeders, which basically means they love to uproot, destroy, and just chew on almost any greenery you put in front of them. They don't just take a little nibble, they actively graze and tear up the substrate. For most aquatic plants, dropping them into a goldfish tank is essentially a death sentence.
If you've ever just wanted to throw your hands up and quit, you are definitely not alone. I mean, look at this Reddit user's comment. "I gave up years ago." It perfectly captures that frustration. When you're constantly dropping cash on beautiful aquatic plants, only to watch them get shredded into a floating salad within a week, giving up really does feel like the only logical option. But before you completely resign yourself to a sterile tank filled with plastic decorations, you should know there is a biological loophole.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the goldfish plant dilemma, hornwort's ultimate water-purifying abilities, the occasional green snack, the messy shedding reality, the overgrowth battle, and finally, making the match work.
Section 1. The goldfish plant dilemma. You see a beautifully planted setup like this, and you probably think, how is that even possible with goldfish? It takes a very specific strategy. Because goldfish have incredibly high bioloads, they produce a ton of waste. They need serious filtration. And because they destroy everything, delicate plants just won't cut it. One awesome strategy shared by successful aquarists is to simply overwhelm the fish. Instead of putting 4 or 5 plants in there, you drop in 20 or more incredibly fast-growing, hardy plants. The goldfish physically can't pick on all of them at once, which gives the plants a chance to actually establish themselves. And that is exactly where hornwort comes in.
Section 2. The ultimate water purifier.
Hornwort isn't just there to look pretty. It's an absolute powerhouse of a water purifier. Because this stuff grows incredibly fast, it acts as a massive nutrient sink. It literally sucks up the ammonia, nitrates, and phosphates your goldfish are constantly producing, which helps prevent those dangerous toxic spikes. Plus, through photosynthesis, it's a fantastic oxygenator. But honestly, here is the coolest part. Hornwort is allelopathic. That's a fancy way of saying it actively releases specific chemicals into the water that stunt the growth of other plants and, more importantly, algae. So it's actively fighting algae blooms while giving you a lush, green backdrop.
Section 3. The occasional green snack.
Now, we've got to talk about the dietary interaction here. The crucial thing to remember is that while goldfish can eat hornwort, it should absolutely never be their main course. A healthy diet for them needs to be 95% high-quality pellets, proteins, and fats. Hornwort is almost entirely just fiber. It doesn't have the essential nutrients your fish actually need to thrive. Think of it as a little side salad. It's totally non-toxic, and the fiber is actually great for their digestion, but if you see your goldfish constantly devouring your hornwort, that is a huge red flag. It usually means you aren't feeding them nearly enough of their primary, nutrient-dense food.
But you know, nature has a pretty funny way of protecting itself. The real reason hornwort often survives when other plants get decimated is mostly physical. The leaves have these tiny little bumps, making them slightly serrated, and the plant overall has a pretty hard, spiky texture. It's basically just a bit too prickly to be comfortable to eat in bulk. Your goldfish will take a nibble, realize it's definitely not gourmet, and just move on. That slight built-in deterrence is exactly what lets the hornwort grow faster than your fish can eat it.
Section 4. The messy shedding reality.
Okay, let's be real for a second. It isn't all sunshine and crystal clear water. Hornwort has this reputation for being totally foolproof, but if you treat it like a plastic decoration, you are going to be miserable. The expectation is this lush, indestructible underwater jungle, but the reality, for a lot of beginners, the plant suddenly melts, it drops thousands of tiny green needles all over your substrate, and you're stuck scooping out slimy, decaying brown stems. Why? Well, because hornwort is actually super sensitive to sudden changes in water parameters or being put in the wrong physical environment.
Look, this is literally the nightmare scenario right here. Say you place your hornwort right in front of a strong filter outflow. You've just triggered a total disaster. That strong current bends and snaps the fragile stems, the plant gets stressed out and responds by aggressively shedding its needles.
Then all those needles drift right into your filter intake, completely clogging up your filtration system. So the thing that was supposed to be a water purifier suddenly becomes the exact thing destroying your tank's circulation. It's messy, it's frustrating, and honestly, it's a massive headache to clean up.
Section 5. The overgrowth battle. So, what happens when the plant is actually too happy? 4 inches. That's right. Under optimal conditions, with decent light and all those rich goldfish nutrients, hornwort can grow up to 4 inches in a single week. Out in the wild, this stuff can reach lengths of 10 feet. It just does not stop.
If you aren't paying attention, that explosive growth turns hornwort into a literal weed. It'll rapidly blanket the entire surface of your aquarium, which completely blocks out the vital light for any other plants you have lower down. And because it's growing at such a crazy speed, it becomes a total nutrient hog. It'll strip the water column bare, effectively starving out the rest of your aquascape. You really have to be prepared to play underwater landscaper to keep this stuff in check.
Section 6. Making the match work. So, how do we actually balance the amazing filtration benefits with the risk of shedding and overgrowth? Well, here is the secret sauce. First and foremost, just let it float. Hornwort doesn't have true roots. If you jam it into the gravel, that buried part is going to rot, the stem will snap, and it'll float up to the surface anyway. So let it float, or just very gently anchor it. Give it moderate light, around 8 to 10 hours a day is plenty. Keep it in a gentle current so you don't trigger that dreaded needle shedding, and keep your temp stable between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And lastly, you've got to commit to grabbing some sharp scissors and pruning the tops every single week.
The beautiful upside to all that weekly pruning is that propagation literally couldn't be easier. If you want to expand your jungle, or maybe give some to a buddy, you just snip a healthy green stem and let it float. Within days, it's pushing out new branches. Because it bounces back so fast, it is easily one of the most rewarding plants you can get as a beginner. So, it all comes back to our ultimate question. Is hornwort going to be your tank's absolute savior, keeping that water crystal clear, or is it going to turn into an overgrown needle-dropping weed? Honestly, the answer is completely up to you. If you respect its need to float, manage your lighting, and stay on top of the trims, it's an incredible game changer for a high-waste goldfish tank. What do you guys think? Are you ready to take on the rapid growth to get those amazing water purifying benefits? Try these tips out in your own tank and see the transformation for yourself. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and happy aquascaping.